Welcome to Trillions. I'm Joel Weber.
And I'm Eric Balchunas.
Eric, there was a big take by our friends at Bloomberg News recently that totally caught my attention. The headline, "The New American Hustle, Dividends Over Day Jobs." You know, part of that sounds pretty alluring. You know, like give up the day job and you just have steady paycheck coming to you from an investment. We've dabbled on this before, but the numbers are actually pretty insane, which is one of the things we want to talk about on today's episode.
Yeah, this part of the ETF market is getting huge. And it's a spectrum. I mean, let's face it, older people love their dividends too. But this is like dividends on steroids. In fact, the names are even like, they remind me of that fake Gatorade company, Idiocracy, Brondo, the thirst mutilator. It's like the income mutilator. You know, it's very... I think one of them is called Income Blast, Income Boost with all caps. So this is selling. There's a market for it. And I think people need to just understand what they're buying. But I think, it's a spectrum, and it's a very hot area. But interesting. Just real quick on Big Take, let's explain this, because how many reporters work at Bloomberg? Like 2,300?
More. Yeah.
3,000.
Something like that. With analysts, yeah.
And only one reporter there's one big take a day.
Yep.
And this was that. So there's 250 big takes a year. And this story got one of those.
Yeah, totally. And as it should have, because the little corners of like what's happening in Reddit and stuff are just endlessly fascinating. And, you know, I mentioned the number, not only the inflows, which we'll talk about, but the percent yield. We're talking like 8% in some cases, or when it's supercharged, like triple digit, like above 100. So this is going to be fascinating. We're going to be joined by Vildana Heinrich, regular on Trillions. She's a cross-asset reporter with Bloomberg News, and she's on the byline. Denitsa Sikova is the other reporter. This time on Trillions, dividends over day jobs? Vildana, welcome back to Trillions.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, so dividends. You've written about this before, but the numbers really blew my mind. Walk us through how big of a landscape this has become in ETFs.
Right, and maybe we should just categorize what it is. I feel like there's two categories, which Eric already sort of hinted at. One is the traditional dividend investing.
Yeah,
so there's
you
a
want
bunch
Coke
of
or
right.
Exxon or
and there's
companies that are famous for dividend payouts.
Exactly, and there are ETFs that hold shares of companies that are high dividend. So those are like your traditional dividend payers. And then there's this new category where you're getting, like you said, like super high yield, sometimes 90% or more. And we have written about it before, but since then it's only grown. And you're just seeing billions and billions of dollars going into these funds. It's a category altogether that encompasses more than $700 billion. But part of the reason that they are growing so much is that there's a whole cohort of finfluencers who post on YouTube and Reddit and other places who love these products and are almost like ambassadors for them.
1 out of every $6 so far this year have gone into this space. Eric, how does that compare with other hot assets classes in ETFs?
They're punching way above their weight. So when you say 1 of every $6, that would be ballpark of, there's $800 billion into ETFs. So 1 of every 6 was $120 billion. That's probably a high percentage over their assets. So this is one of the faster growing areas. I get it. I mean, I know firsthand this is really exciting stuff, because when I was at the Money Show, I was doing a presentation in the booth area, which is sort of like you're like a carnival barker. It's actually good practice for presenting, because you have to reel people in. Like, hey, step right up. It's a whole thing. Anyway, I'm going through flavors of hot sauce, and I get to the Yield Max, which is like income hot sauce. And I got like 12 people there. But when I start showing these yields, they're like 80, 90, 100%. I don't even know if people could see it. I think they just sensed it, like pheromones, and that my crowd doubled. And it was
I'm about to walk over to you. You're like really enticing me.
It was then that I
Carnival
realized.
Barker future.
And these are older people. So I think everybody loves income and yield. I think the psychological feeling is you're getting a check sent to you, and it feels good. It's like, now it's complicated because in some cases that's extra on top of what the market does, like your S&P. It's income is like dividends on top of your return. But in some cases, it's like you're giving up all your return to give that yield. So it's almost like you're just deciding to pay yourself in yield or income instead of just cashing out after 10 years in total return. So it's psychological, I think, in a way when it comes to those really high yield ones.
Okay, so wait, let's just pause and break down what the playbook for these ETFs in the sort of the Kool-Aid that the fin influencer crowd is using. What does that playbook look like?
Yeah, so it generally looks something like this, where you're investing your money into these ETFs, whether it's a variety of them or specifically YieldMax is one issuer that has the most popular products or some of the most popular products. Maybe you invest a bunch of your money into a couple of their ETFs, but then you're getting those payouts. The issuers are making them, have been making them more frequent, so there are some where you can get weekly payouts, but let's say you're getting them monthly. And so we spoke with a number of people who get anywhere from $500 a month in these payouts to somebody who's looking to get $9,000 a month, and then using them to pay for all of their bills, basically. So they're paying for gas, electricity, like it's coming out of those accounts.
Wow.
One guy we spoke with got a new used car, as I called it, and like the car payments are being made thanks to, or via these, I should say, dividend payouts. Yeah, exactly. Mortgages, so they're sort of, it's like they've built a life around, like their life revolves
around these payouts. And when you talk to them, were they taking like money that would otherwise be like retirement, or are they taking like whatever their paychecks look like and shoveling into this just to supersize?
This is a really good question, because that guy, he actually, he told us he cashed out his wife's retirement account.
Does she know that?
She does know that.
Good.
I asked him the same question. I said, don't make me call her. Is she aware that she owns, because then he used that money to buy some of these, some YieldMax ETFs actually. But he has a day job also, and he has a regular retirement account on the side. So it's a mixture. I think it depends on the person and their risk tolerance. The $9,000 figure I mentioned is somebody we spoke with who recently moved across the country and was having a hard time finding a job, and then sort of, like Eric described, became enticed by these high payouts and decided to, I think he sold some of his cars in his house and he put that money towards some of these ETFs. So it's really interesting. It's sort of astounding what they've been able to build and how they've built their lives, like their daily functioning around these ETFs.
Total change in terms of like cash flow and how probably normies might think about cash flow. Eric, to get these returns, 8, 70, 90, 100% returns, what is different about how these products are actually functioning?
To put it, it's a spectrum, but generally speaking, they're writing call options just outside of the money. So let's say Tesla's $100. They're writing a call option at like $101 or $102. You pay a lot for that. So I'm getting a lot of money from you to buy that, because that means if Tesla goes up even a little or a lot, you can call it and you instantly book a profit. That means if Tesla does go up, the call option gets exercised and you get none of Tesla's upside. But you get that premium from the person who you sold the option to. So you essentially writing off your entire future of return to get income now. That's really what it is. Somebody who owns Tesla and didn't do any of this would just reimagine the total return they got. Just say, well, if that was income, I would have gotten the same thing. So again, this is somewhat psychological. Some people just like to see it as income. The guy we spoke to a couple, like 2 years ago, maybe, we had one of these 20-somethings on to talk about this. He said he used that income to get a mortgage, like it was part of his income. So I get it. I think also one of the lines in here that I thought was really great was, I've always had what they call the shiny object syndrome. So shiny objects, hot sauce, it's a very viable area of the ETF world. And at least he's honest with himself. And I got to give you credit for finding these people, because a lot of times these articles are written from ivory tower folks, and they're like, look at all these degens, these idiots. They don't know. I'm a real Wall Street guy. I know everything. These are idiots. And like you never get to hear from the actual people trading them. And you hear from them, you're like, okay, these guys, they know more about this than you think. They know the risks and they're deciding to take it anyway. I really appreciate you getting them in the article. So how did you get a 27-year-old like YouTube income addict to talk to you?
So YieldMax, actually, the issuer behind some of the most popular products, as I mentioned, they actually had an event at NASDAQ where they invited a bunch of these influencers. And Denitsa and I attended it, and it was a closing bell ringing. And we talked to so many people who love these funds. Eli, actually, he does not invest in YieldMax ETFs. He takes a more traditional route. I think he invests a lot of his money in the Big Schwab dividend ETF, which is like the biggest, one of the most established, like old school dividend ETFs. But yeah, it ran the gamut, and some people really like the super high yielding stuff, the 90+% or 80+%. But we met a lot of them at that event. And then the other thing is, I mean, they're online, so you can find their YouTube videos.
By the way, let me just read off. I'm going to go, here's YieldMax's product line. First of all, YieldMax has $17 billion. That's a lot for an indie issuer. They only had $1 or $2 billion to start the year. And that's how fast they've grown. So they're here. I'm going to sort by yield. 215%, 119%, 173%. I mean, these are outrageous. I mean, and a lot of these products like MSTY, which is the MicroStrategy, that's taken $5 billion this year, and it yields 166%. But its year-to-date return is 13%. I imagine that's lagging MicroStrategy by a ton.
Well, to be fair to the issuers, what they'll tell you is they're not claiming that they're going to help you beat the market or, stay on par with the market. If they say to you, if you want to do that, don't buy YieldMax products,
these are
or
not
don't
those
buy.
products.
These are not meant for that. These are meant for those payouts, and some people just want the payouts.
So walk us through if you're.
But by the way, can I just say something? So there's these thing called strips that were made up back in the day by Wall Street guys, where they would strip out the coupon payment from the bond. And so if you wanted just the bond and the principal, it jacks up your interest rate duration. And if you want the strips, it just gives you the cash flow. And there's a lot of institutions that might just want the dividends from the S&P versus the return, some for tax reasons. In other words, if you haven't, there's totally an institutional investor who might do this. And it sounds so like, oh, that's great, that's serious. But just because a 27-year-old does it and it's in the ETF world, I feel like sometimes it gets overly slammed. But it's not. Wall Street's been doing this forever. They take this out of this, put this in this. It's just,
Right.
It's like it cooks all stuff up. That's what they do.
But the difference is to have retail being able to do this on their own with their own portfolios.
Agree, which is why we have the equivalent of a movie rating system for ETFs. These would probably be PG-13, I imagine. I'd have to look at our system, or maybe even R, based on the slight complication.
Even NC-17 rating in there?
We do. That's reserved for like triple leveraged ETFs that are ETNs and roll futures.
Could you leverage dividends like this?
Sure.
3x that 175. Okay, Vildana.
But if I can add one more thing, just in terms of the flows and how much money is coming in, because Eric mentioned how much YieldMax has now. After that event, I think what happened is a lot of the influencers went home and made videos about the event, and YieldMax got over $5 billion.
Wow. So
that's also a whole influencer thing, by the way. And I was just in Brazil, and somebody was telling me there that like the whole market there is run by influencers. Like, I think we're in the legacy media, I'd call us. Maybe we're a little more advanced, but the amount of like views and stuff going on, like I see a YouTube channel, I'm like, oh my God, that's more than like CNN gets for some of their shows. Like, it's really pervasive.
Vildana, what other ETFs? We've mentioned the Schwab one and Misty, which is strategy centric. What other ETFs does the crowd adore?
Do you want me to talk about JEPI here?
Sure.
Is that what you're trying to get at?
We can do JEPI. I know there's a couple other ones, but
were you thinking of another one?
What's the pantheon of dividend ETFs, and what's everyone's favorites?
Well, JEPI is a product from JP Morgan that launched a couple of years ago that when the market sold off in 2022, JEPI actually did better. It's than the market. The market lost like 20% that year, and it has maybe what we might call a more conservative payout of around 8%. But if we want to sort of contextualize it within this conversation, it also, if you look overall, it's lagging the market by a lot. So if you had been invested in the market, your returns would be looking better. But again, the people who are running JEPI, they'll tell you it's not meant to be beating the market.
That analysis I just did on where the call option is written, I think JEPI, they're writing that call option way more out of the money. So in that example of Tesla, it would have to go up a lot before the call got exercised. So it's where in the money you write the option, you able to sort of fine tune whether you want income a little more, or like steroids. And that's why it is a spectrum. And you can look, I actually sorted all ETFs by yield, and it cascades down from 200% to zero pretty nicely. So you can really just find like where your right yield is for how much upside you want to give up. But just know, at the end of the day, whether it's a Wall Street institution or these people, there is no free lunch. You're probably going to give up something to get something that's really cool looking.
Just to break that down and be really simple about it, what else are you giving up?
You're giving up upside plus the cost of the ETF, right? If you did this on your own, you wouldn't pay the expense ratio. But really, it's in these steroid ones, it's all the upside. And the problem with that is the total return of a stock. It's unlimited. I mean, not that they go up forever, but they could go up a lot, and you've just given up all of that
for a payout.
For a payout. So, I think in many cases, people, if you just imagined the total return of a stock, and then like in your mind, you said, okay, well, if I did get this into like 4 payouts, it would be X, and then just imagine you got the money, but you didn't. That's the same thing. I mean, you could just. There's return in the market. It's like, how do you want that delivered to you? Do you want to just get it all in one lump sum when you are done? Most people like that because they'd rather, use their paycheck to like make their day-to-day stuff. And then like, oh, I have this whole return waiting for me when I retire. That's generally what people do. This is a new way. And this is another quote I found really good in your article, which is the guy said, my granddad worked in a factory his whole life. I don't want to lock away that capital until I'm 65. So there's a little Henry Hill Goodfellas situation going on here, which is, if you remember in Goodfellas, he's like, look at all those suckers going to work at their 9-to-5 job. The mob was a better, easier way to make a living, and that was the choice he made at the beginning of the movie. That seems to be what's happening here. Like, that's why I say, like, this granddad guy that gets kind of like slammed at the early, I bet he was probably pretty happy, and he certainly didn't have any, how do you live your life? Like, if you live your life looking for shortcuts, sometimes you're going to get burned or regret or haunted, and that's why you got to be careful with this stuff. The granddad who worked in a factory and then got a big payday when he retired, again, that's it. I wouldn't be too judgmental of that life.
Yeah. Eric needs a rocking chair on a porch. That'd be like, and then he can, do his carnival routine from there.
You can buy Misty and then use
exactly.
the payouts to get your
Step
rocking
right
chair.
up.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think this is really important because the economic factors, the post-pandemic world, inflation, people having a lot of these people are really young. Not to say that they're the ones we quoted are having a hard time finding jobs, but in general, there's a lot of young people struggling to find entry-level positions. I mean, we all know, what's going on, and I think it's important to think about some of those factors that might drive people towards these.
Where they're basically just looking at the system and being like, "This system's not working for me.
Exactly.
I'm going to find a way to make it work."
Or your employer calling you back to the office 5 days a week when because one of the people we did interview said, they called me back and I knew I could do it from home. I want more flexibility. I want to be able to go see my baby next to my office. I want to be able to go to Alaska if I want to, tomorrow, for example, and then still come back and be self-employed, because a lot of people are thinking of it as, being self-employed.
Yeah.
So real quick on this issue of young people feeling like the system doesn't work for them, especially trying to get a house. That's a real biggie. It's really hard to get a house. People in the 30s are even struggling. This is a big theme in the crypto book I'm working on, Joel, which is it's really helped me come around and really understand crypto. It's the same appeal, because in this case, it's inflation. And you can't really catch inflation. They say it's 2%, but it feels like more. And the idea of what you used to be able to get for working a regular 9-to-5 job, it's not the same. And so I think crypto and Bitcoin have appealed to that generation for the same reason. So there's a lot going on here. I think there'd be a pretty good Venn diagram of like the catalyst for this and the catalyst for crypto, which is something that is that feeling. There's the Henry Hill one, which is I just rather have a life of crime. That's, you could probably be like, well, that's probably not a good idea. But then there's the whole.
I love that you hedge that with probably.
Probably. He's from Philly.
I mean, in the end, he did fine. He did go in the witness protection program. Paulie went to jail, though, I think. So, moral of the story is be a guy in the bottom. Don't be the main guy. Anyway.
You're dead if you're at the bottom, man. No. I think we can leave that comparison aside.
Okay. But the legitimacy of not feeling like you're able to get the same deal, American dream style, that your parents and grandparents got, that's real. And I think that is part of this silent tax of inflation that it's hard to put your finger on it, but if you're a young person, you feel it.
All right. Phil, Donna, thanks so much for joining us on Trillions.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to Trillions. Until next time, you can find us on the Bloomberg Terminal, Bloomberg.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you like to listen. We'd love to hear from you. Hit us up on social. I'm at Joel Weber Show. He's at Eric Balchinas. Trillions is produced by Magnus Henriksen. Sage Bauman is the head of Bloomberg Podcasts.